Everyone, hello, hope you're doing okay. Welcome to my first impressions of, well, Final Fantasy XVI or Game of Fantasy. Yeah, basically this is my basic first impressions. I've played it for quite some time actually. I played it about 6 hours, so quite a reasonable amount of time, but I've not completed the game by any means. So it's really just my sort of first impressions of playing the game, what I think of it, going forward, whether based on what I've played. First impressions, as I say, whether I recommend it or not, and what seems to sort of stand out and be good, and just to give you an idea of what you're sort of getting yourself into, basically. So first of all, the reason I've said Game of Fantasy or Final of Thrones or whatever, is basically because they've literally just said, right, 5 years ago or something, they've said, well, Game of Thrones is popular, let's make a Final Fantasy based on that or very similar to that. I wouldn't say based on it, but very similar to it. So it's got all the sort of similar tropes. It's got, it's that kind of set in that sort of fantasy world to an extent, although mixed with Final Fantasy. So you do have your chocobos and summons and things like this, but you've got all the sort of very well, it's not quite as racy as Game of Thrones by any means, but you've got a bit of risque stuff in there, not anything to set the your heart rate beating too fast, but certainly some things in there, lots of swearing, things like this. Well, not lots of swearing, but swearing. You've got sort of typical characters from Game of Thrones. You've got ones that are lifted almost verbatim, if that's the right expression. You've got ones that are lifted almost identically from Game of Thrones or the slide. I mean, you've got basically your Hodor character, you've got your Ned Stark character, you've got your Cersei, you've got your Jon Snow. Even Jon Snow even has a dog. He's got Clive in this game. It's your main protagonist. He even has a dog in it. What's the dog called again? Now I forgot the name of the dog. But yeah, anyway, Tovor, something like that. But anyway, Torgal's the name. I keep going Torval and Dean, Torgal. So there you go. It's so it's basically it's just lifting bits from Game of Thrones. It's got some other things in though, obviously, as well as George R. R. Martin's books. It seems to have bits from, well, I think the Stormlight Archive from Brandon Sanderson seems to have bits of it. The main character seems to have a bit of a background like that. He's branded. He was forced to join the army after doing something, basically just like the main character from that. So it's as if it could be coincidence, but it does feel as if the people who wrote this game have read a few fancy books, or at least were tasked with reading a few fancy novels and basically lifting the stuff from there. And there's a slight mention of the Blight as well, which could be taken from Robert Jones' Wheel of Time. So there's a few bits and pieces there, but there's a bit of Attack on Titan with one of the characters as well. We also got and again, leading from that, he's a bit like the Mountain also in Game of Thrones. And he does follow a similar path. There is certain characters, what's going to happen to them if you watch Game of Thrones, because they just fit in precisely into that sort of archetype. So it's one of those really. But it's good. It is good. It's enjoyable. It's enjoyable all the same. And reasons for that would be because, well, basically it's an action RPG rather than a turn-based one. So you are just running about. You are literally moving around the battlefield in fights. They sort of happen in a bit like almost like Chrono Trigger back in the day. So the baddies are on the screen. You interact with them and it's seamless, and then you start fighting, and you've got different attack buttons, you do combos, you jump and stuff like that. So it's very much an action RPG. It's not turn-based, and you don't seem to control, at least that I've seen anyway, more than one character. So there are other characters that join your party, but you don't control them, they control themselves. You do have some inputs with your dog when your dog joins you later on. Not quite that far into it, it's not really that much of a surprise that it does. I mean, it tells you the dog controls in the control screen, for instance. But they seem to be very minor here, the dog controls. I mean, you ask it to heal you, it heals you like 1 hit point or something like that. It's just ridiculous, It's it almost seems tacked on, to be honest with you. It might do certain things with combos. I think one of the commands is meant to launch a baddie into the air, but I've not really noticed it specifically doing it. And the problem with that is as well, it does seem a bit rubbish because you've got so many different inputs and controls, so it's quite difficult to concentrate on the dog when it's the same inputs are for things like potions and things like this, which actually do serve more of an important purpose, and other enhancer things, some of buffs like stroke potions and things you've got assigned sort of to the alternate D-pad commands that those are used for inputs. So the dog ones you have to press, I don't know which button it is now, but let's just say I think it's the left D button skips between the two options. So the top down and right D pads do different options based on what bit you've got selected. So you have to kind of move between one and the other. And in the middle of intense real-time fights, it's quite difficult to do that when your dog doesn't really do anything. It's just like, what's the point, But the rest of it's quite good. You've got various special attacks. You've got using various combinations of buttons. You can upgrade your attacks using action points that you get from doing battles and things. You upgrade them and enhance them and learn new ones. There's special attacks based on icons, which are basically summons or eidolons, whatever you say. The icons are spelled like EIKON. now you can get imbued with some of those. I think it looks like up to 3 of them at some points, and you can press the R2 trigger and then press various attack buttons to do special attacks, have cooldowns associated with them. And they're very powerful, very powerful. You can improve those, you get more and more, things like that. So it seems to be perhaps a limit on the summons you can get there, perhaps only 3 of them. But we'll see. As I said, I've not played loads of it, but the implications are there that that's the case. So yes, it seems quite interesting really, but as I say, very much a different game than regular Final Fantasies or most other Final Fantasies. It's not turn-based at all. You seem to only have one person in your party that you really directly control. The rest of them just seem to be there and do things in the background. They might kill the odd baddie, but they obviously are just there, just look like they're doing something, but generally it's down to you. Even that same with your dog, really. So it seems pretty interesting though. It seems pretty good. I quite enjoy it like that, but as I say, you might not be too mad on that. You got the character Sid in there as well. Sid's in it for the first time ever, because everyone's called Clive and Lana and other names like this, Bernadette and I'm just making some of these names up. I mean, the main character's Clive, and I think there's I can't remember what this is, a girl, I think she's called Lisa or something like that, but they've all got sort of quite normal names like that, like you get in Game of Thrones almost, but Sid's in there, and for the first time ever in a Final Fantasy game, his name fits in, but then for whatever reason, they've decided to sort of, it's a sort of, diminutive of Sidolphus, which if, Sidolphus would fit in every other Final Fantasy game he's been in, where Sid didn't, as I think anyway, but this time Sidolphus doesn't fit, it doesn't fit in this game, Sid fits in this game, So it's typical that for the one game where his name actually fits in, one Final Fantasy game where his name actually suits, they've actually changed it to something that doesn't, and that would have fit in all the other Final Fantasy games. So strange decision there. I don't know why they've done that, but there we go. I wanted to make him sound a bit more mysterious, but then again, he fit perfectly in this one. He's voiced by, you'll know him, I think he played the Green Knight if you've seen that film. Bit of sort of a semi-art house film, that one, but he's a very deep voiced actor. He's been in many things. You'll know his voice as soon as you hear it.
On a pet project of mine, though she's not above biting the hand that feeds her.
Usually a voice actor, I think, but he has played parts in certain films, but you'll know his voice, very deep, a British voice. What else is there going on really? It's just a pretty good game. I say it's all the Game of Thrones tropes. I say it's an action RPG, it's real time, there's no turn-based combat, you don't have other party members that actually you can control and level up and things, so far at least, but I'm quite sure that's the case. So that is I think I'm not sure I'm too keen on. I'd like it if there were other party members that you could do things with, but of course, because it's an action RPG, very much so, it'd be difficult to really manage all that. So, fair enough, they've tried to do a different route, and it generally works okay. I feel like it's quite interesting, the combos and things work quite well. It's quite easy to, even though, the combat's, you've got loads of characters on the screen, enemies, you can easily sort of switch between them. You don't find yourself really getting too confused, even though you kind of are, but it does a good job of making it so that it's not difficult to just zoom around and things. You have like a parry system as well, sort of perfect parries or perfect blocks, which allow you to get special attacks in things like if you block or move just at the right time. I think it's parry really, if you dash out of the way at the right time. So there is all that going on. You've got to sort of master those kind of things. So it is more of a reflex one. It is definitely, there's no pause. Well, you can pause the game, I imagine. I don't think, well, you can do, I'm quite sure you can, but there's no real sort of pausing it to do a load of attacks. It is literally real time. You can pause the game, but it literally just pauses it. It's not like a special input section. It does have all these weird, we don't know what to make of it, these cinematic blocks and cinematic attacks, where the game will sort of basically go into a quick time event mode, a QTE mode, where someone will launch it, usually towards the start or the end or midpoint of a battle, and do a special bit, and you have to input like one button, and you get a very generous window to put this input in. It's just there to make it more cinematic, really. It kind of does, it's called cinematic dodge or cinematic attack or something, so you'd be very hard pressed to mess these up, I think. At least so far anyway. They might get harder as the game goes on, I don't know, but so they're interesting to have. They're quite pointless really, but they add a bit of drama to it all, and I guess it's trying to be a drama, as I say, with the Game of Thrones influence. It's not too bad all in all, really. This, as I say, it's just a different game than you might be expecting from Final Fantasy, by the fact that it's an action RPG, by the fact that you don't really have a party that you directly control. People would come in and jump in and out of your group, but they're not really party members. They're just there with you, and they chat to you as you walk along and things. It is quite similar to, at least I think so far, to Final Fantasy 13, where you're just wandering through the game. You're not like wandering you are on a world map as such, but you don't sort of, it's not the same. You're basically going from location to location. There's no random battles on the world map. you know, it's quite linear. You just go from point A to point B. There's no big fields to run around in, at least so far. You know, it's just you just go from one point to another. And you have like a home base as well that you can keep going back to, and things kind of change. Don't know to what extent at the moment, but it's basically just upgrading the shops and things. Just, well, not upgrading, but the shops get more stock in and things like that. You might be able to upgrade things as time goes on, but I'm not sure. One of the things that did annoy me though is that when you're on the map screen, you can't sort of click on the main menu. You can't upgrade your character when on the map screen. You can't press. You know, it's a good time. It's usually between stages. You can't upgrade your character. You just can't view your character stats. You can't do anything, and you can't even save the game. I don't think it was just very poor. That, you know. Another thing that really irritated me was a lack of a mini map as well. You have like you can view the map. You can press like the sort of weird on the PlayStation, the middle button thing, which is like the stroke sensor, whatever you'd say. I don't know what you call it, touch sensor. But you know, but there's no mini map, and it's really, 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 really irritating. It's the most irritating thing, because I just want to see, because you can't tell. Well, the level tries to compensate for this. You can tell by having lots of transition points where you like move between a very thin sort of opening in a wall or something like that, or lift up a log to go underneath something, and you can still go back. I mean, usually anyway, maybe not always. But you know, to sort of say you have a bearing of where you are, but it's still quite difficult when there's multiple paths. You can't easily tell where you have and haven't been. Sometimes when fights occur as well, so you'll get ambushed as soon as you walk into one of these areas. Loads of fights will happen, and then you don't know where you came from. You very easily. It's quite difficult to get your bearings. And if you just had a mini map, it would help out no end. And I don't know why they've not got one, and it is really irritating. And I'll say a minor irritation as well is the fact that you can't. I'll say when you're on the world map and things, you can't access your ability screen to give yourself, you know, to assign points and things like this. You know, it's just strange, very strange. Unless I don't even think you can save the game on that point. You might have auto saved it, but you know, you just can't do things on that screen. It's just really, really poor. So that's quite annoying, to be honest with you. But all in all, I quite enjoyed it, to be honest with you. It's quite exciting. It's quite easy to play. You know, I think obviously when it gets harder, you know, you'll have to be a lot more strategic with your inputs and things. And some boss battles do require parrying quite a lot, or at least being aware of what's going on. But I do find that with the main grunts and things, you can just mash the buttons and you'll do your special attacks and kill half of them quite easily with one hit. So for the most part, you are just mashing buttons. Not, you know, you can block a bit and this and that, but generally, you know, you just move from baddie to baddie. Even if you don't kill all of them, you just move from one to another, and then you'll stop one from attacking you by just attacking it while it's before it even gets a chance to attack you, and then do a super move when its cooldown comes, which kills about 3 people at once. You know, it's not quite like that at the start of the game because you have to learn these, but after quite a short amount of time, you do get these abilities that allow you to do this. So, you know, and I've not done on easy difficulty either. I think there's perhaps 2 difficulties, I think, but I've on the normal one, or not the easy one anyway. So yeah, so you know, I'm sure it gets more strategic as you go in. I'm sure you have to be very careful as you get to harder bosses and late game stuff, I'm sure, but just general grunts and things, it doesn't seem that difficult, you know. And also, you can upgrade your items and things like this. You know, you can upgrade everything. You can assign a limited amount of equipment to yourself to enhance certain things. That's always, you know, it's the usual sort of affair. But it's upgrading items generally. You do get sort of bits of monsters and things, and bits of the environment that you can use to upgrade your rocks and stuff like that, basically meteorites and rare and common ones, things. Upgrade your items and all this, that, and the other. Sometimes it can be a bit unclear as to just what you need to, you know, basically whether, I think at one point it wasn't clear. I'm sure this will become more obvious as I play it more, but it wasn't clear that I needed to buy a weapon or not in order to craft it, or whether I could just craft it without buying it. I don't know. It seemed to sort of, I don't know. Yeah, it seemed to be strange. Maybe I already had the equipment. I'm not sure. So maybe take that with a pinch of salt. Might be enough, something enough in that. But yeah, basically, all in all, it seems a good game. I'm enjoying it. It's quite action based, as I say. It's just, you know, the story's quite engaging. You know, the characters are, you know, quite quite interesting. Dialogue's good. You know, you're walking through towns. There are a few people you talk to by clicking X, whatever it is, but generally people just talk automatically. There's lots of mini side quests and things, but you know, yeah, it's a typical affair. Not loads of them, but it's just all in all quite good. It's enough to keep you going. It's enough to keep it varied, and it's quite interesting to do the side quests and do the main quests. Yeah, I recommend this one. It seems good so far, as I say, but maybe not the Final Fantasy game you'd be expecting by the fact there's no turn-based combat, and by the fact that you know, there's only one character that you could be basically directly in charge of and level up and control and things. So there is that, but it still seems to work okay, I think. But it's the fact that it's an action RPG might be the bit that perhaps would put a few people off. But you know, it's Final Fantasies do change every time to add some different bits and pieces in there to make them slightly different. Well, I won't say radically different, but it's different enough. And this one, it's the fact it's an action RPG, and I think it works okay. I think it's good. I think I would have probably preferred or been happy to have it with a party and turn based, but or at least maybe a party and action RPG where you can basically you can tell sort of your companions what to do generally, a bit like Secret of Mana or something like that, But all in all, it's a good game and I'm enjoying it. But yeah, very much heavily influenced by Game of Thrones. It's ridiculous actually, it's quite funny in a way. But yeah, there we go. So yeah, I recommend giving this one a try. I'll probably do a review when I've finished it, see what I actually think, but that might take some time. All right, guys, take care. Have a good one. See you next time. Bye for now.